Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
you gotta be confident about your Achilles when
Chase
you
Thornton,
Yeah, I mean, I got him.
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to be great and dominate.
Well, all right. Welcome into another edition of Operation Domination, available to you on your favorite podcast app. And make sure you check out our video content when you go to the Fantasy Football Advice Network YouTube channel at FF Advice Net. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mater, joined here with the full crew, Adam LaRue and Chase Thornton. We got week 6 preview. Thank God there's only 2 teams on bye this week. 4 teams is too much. It's too much. I'm telling you. We do have a little breaking news. Joe Flacco got traded to the Cincinnati Bengals. How we feel?
It's so dumb. I mean, genuinely. So I told Dan before the show. I was looking into it. Both of them on about 41%. It's like really close. On about 41% of their dropbacks have faced pressure. They are both in the bottom 10 of the NFL, and that's like eligible quarterbacks. We're talking including Carson Wentz, Mariota, like those guys. Like it have taken snaps at the quarterback position. Like no, starters, like whatever. Joe Flacco's under 40% completion, by the way. Even Jake Browning is at 51. Both of them are awful. Both turnover-worthy play rate. Browning was at 8%. Joe Flacco's at 6%. Neither of them, the big-time throw rate is that impressive. Joe Flacco's 1 touchdown and 4 interceptions against pressure. And he will be facing a lot of it in Cincinnati, just like he did in Cleveland.
Yes, he will.
The receivers got better, but the offensive line did not. And that was the problem for Joe Flacco. It wasn't a receiver problem for him in Cleveland. It was he cannot handle pressure. His feet are concrete.
He's an old man.
Yeah,
I don't blame him. Move when you get old like that. Trust me.
No, look, and that's fine. That's fine. But to Adam's point, like I think people are going to look at this like, but Joe Flacco still has an arm, and now there's Shamar Chase and T. Higgins, and I'm here to say like I don't see how this is going to be different. Jake Browning can throw a decent deep ball in his own right. There's going to be just as many turnovers, just as many sacks taken. I don't think this gets any better. I don't know what the point of the move was. And a lot of people are speculating like, okay, well, did they hit this team up or hit this team up? But maybe they did. Maybe they did their due diligence and no one's ready to move on guys because we're not quite at the trade deadline yet. I don't know. But if this was the move, you might as well just stuck with a younger player in Jake Browning because Joe Flacco is probably going to be hurt in 2 weeks and you're going to be right back to where you started anyways. It was one of the most ridiculous unilateral moves I've ever seen in my life. It does not give me a fantasy boost when it comes to Jamar Chase or T. Higgins, at least not in my book.
Do we all remember that? Like we all remember that Flacco also threw 8 interceptions in that late season run in Cleveland 2 years ago that everybody is still kind of living off of right now. Like his reputation is still living off that, I feel like right now. And listen, I had higher hopes for him coming into this season than what he's hit. And I would love, as a guy who has Chase and has Higgins and has Chase Brown in other leagues, I would love for him to actually be a boost in the arm for this offense. How much fun would Jameis Winston have looked right now in that jersey as opposed to Joe flipping Flacco?
First of all, not only Jamar Chase would catapult back up to being the wide receiver 1 with Jameis Winston, but T. Higgins, I'd probably immediately put him in my top 12.
Right.
I mean, that's the difference that we're talking about if he made that move. Maybe that move wasn't available. I don't know. It's Cincinnati Bengals. They do a lot of dumb things, so I'm not even sure they actually checked. We'll probably never know. All right, so we're about to get into the start-sit questions. I will lead off with Adam. You and I split our showdowns last week when it was just you and me on air, and Chase was off gallivanting. And but it was funny to me what you said in the chat because the real answer was you shouldn't have started anybody we were talking about at the end of the day, which was 100% true. So the recap that because we usually get some showdowns here and start sit questions. It was Alvin Kamara versus Woody Marks. Alvin Kamara won in very ugly fashion. And then it was Zach Charbonnet versus Kenneth Walker. Zach Charbonnet won because, well, I said he'd fall in the end zone. Kenneth Walker wouldn't. And that's basically what it boiled down to. That's all she wrote. So 1-1. I'm still 3-2. So I'll take it. And not to toot my own horn, guys, but this is actually good credibility for the show. If you were wondering how accurate our analysis is, hey, I was in the top 10 of Fantasy Pros expert accuracy rankings this past week. I was just saying.
You were.
Just saying. Adding credibility to the show. Not tooting my own horn, just adding credibility to the show. All right, so let's get into these star stick questions here. The first one right off the rip is interesting because I don't know how you decide between those two, but I do think a lot of teams have these two quarterbacks, even in single quarterback leagues. So the first question is, need help deciding between Drake Maye or Matthew Stafford in week 6? Chase, where do you fall on this?
I mean, it's close. Obviously, they're like QB 6 and 7 on the season in points. There, it's really close. In terms of the matchups, I mean, you're talking Baltimore that Stafford gets to face is giving up the second most points to opposing quarterbacks, and New Orleans that Maye gets to run up against here is giving up the 7th most. I think when I look at what I expect from these games, I'm going to lean ever so slightly toward Drake Maye. I like his rushing ability. He hasn't necessarily unleashed it yet, but I like what he can do with the run. I think that, in a game that's going to be, that they should be able to win this game. I don't think anybody has any problem with that or with that statement. But I think that it's possible he gets free a little bit here and actually gets to use his arms or his legs. And we know what his arm can do. I think that team is on the upswing. So I will lean ever so slightly toward Drake Maye right now.
Okay. Adam, are you in agreement or no?
Yeah, I am. I'll keep it short and sweet. I just think that realistically, if the Rams get out to a heavy lead, I think Stafford doesn't throw that much. I don't think that Drake Maye takes the foot off the pedal. And that I think boils down to the difference. Also, like the Ravens' run defense is like an NAIA team right now. So they don't need to throw if they don't want to. Every Rams throw is purely optional. So I don't know. I think the floor is a lot better with Drake Maye this week.
Perfectly said. I almost feel like you got into my notes and read them word for word because that was literally the tiebreaker for me too. So like for me, I have Drake Maye coming in here as quarterback 7 on the week. I have Matthew Stafford at quarterback 9. The matchup's beautiful with the Ravens 100%. But like you said, Kyron Williams could have a great game. They decide in the second half, they just need to run it out and don't have to do anything else. It's very plausible. Where against the Saints have been feisty enough where I think they'll be able to stay in it with New England. And to your point, like Drake Maye is going to have to be a little more involved. Chase, you mentioned how he hasn't really opened it up on the rushing yet, but he's still one of the more mobile quarterbacks. And you're going up against a team, the Saints, that are allowing the 7th most rushing yards to the quarterback.
They just let Jackson Dart run for 55 yards on him last week on 7 carries. I think Drake Maye can do that. Yeah.
With a bad hamstring on top of it. Yeah. So I think Drake Maye here, just a little bit of a safer floor to Adam's point. I'm with you on that. All right, so let's move to our next question of the week. And this player is going to come up twice, actually. So Judkins or Travis Etienne. Interesting. All those guys who picked up Judkins late are now trying to figure out, how do I squeeze this guy in my lineup when I have a bunch of other good options? So Adam, let's go to you first. Which way would you lean for week 6?
It is ever so slightly Judkins. But I literally have them back to back. They're both in like my high RB2 tier. So I'd feel great starting either of them. If I had to choose, I'm taking Judkins, but Judkins has a really nice matchup this week.
Yeah, no, he really does. Chase, you in agreement with that or no?
I'm kind of going the other way. I'm ever so slightly, but it is slight. I am ever so slightly leaning towards Travis Etienne. When I think about how I see this game playing out, I think that that's a competitive game that stays competitive all the way through. I think they're going to need Etienne. He's been one of their top, weapons on their offense. He's been so consistent. And yeah, I mean, he's facing Seattle, but he's at home, and Seattle, you can move the ball on them. They haven't been a stone wall. The Cleveland matchup with Pittsburgh, starting their rookie quarterback again. I'm not as confident that game stays as competitive as long. And so given the entire, offensive environment, I should say, I'm leaning ever so slightly Etienne this week because I think that that game stays competitive and they need him.
All right, so I'll be the tiebreaker. I know we all have them ranked too close together to actually have a showdown here, so I'm not going to bother with that. I'll just go with the tiebreaker for the question. I am slightly on Judkins. So he's my RB10 on the week. Travis Etienne is my RB13. The difference comes down to the matchup. So they're both close, but while Seattle's allowing a literal half a point more per game to the running back in fantasy points, it's because of the receiving aspect. If you're a ball catching running back, you're putting up points on Seattle. If you're not, you're not. Like, that's kind of what it's boiling down to. And Travis Etienne is not involved enough on a consistent basis in the passing game of the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's kind of the issue here. So Seattle, they're only allowing 3.3 rushing yards per play right now. That is the second least in the entire NFL. And we kind of just watch Etienne get bottled up by a decent run defense with the Kansas City Chiefs too. The Steelers, on the other hand, while they're about the same as far as Seattle and fantasy points allowed to the running back position, they're more in the middle of the pack. They're allowing 4.2 rushing yards per play. So almost a full yard more. And you're talking about a running back who needs that efficiency on the ground to do what he does. Judkins is the engine of that offense right now. Everything they do is based on him being able to run that ball effectively. I think he'll be able to do so against Pittsburgh this week. That's why I give him the slight nod into this matchup. All right, Judkins is going to come up in another question, guys. So it's Brian Thomas Jr., who finally showed life on Monday Night Football, or Quinshon Judkins in the flex. Chase, what do you got?
It might sound funny given my answer to the last question, but I'm going to lean Judkins on this one because he showed life, but I want to see more consistency out of that pass game right now. And I just think that, Judkins' floor is so high. And, I could have said this in his favor for the last question, but with that rookie quarterback, there's no reason that they shouldn't lean on what has looked like their best offensive weapon as well. So in this one, even though it's the same offense, different position, I'm going to lean Judkins over BTJ on that one.
Okay. Adam, you in agreement?
Yeah, I'm in agreement. Brian Thomas had a great game. Like, from a football perspective, He was awesome. From a fantasy perspective, it still didn't amount to all that much. And I just need to see it actually happen for him. I also think that the problem there has been Trevor Lawrence has been really inconsistent, more than like outright bad. He's made good throws all season. It's been that there's also a lot of bad mixed in. He showed up really well for Kansas City. Don't know that that's like, it's going to be consistent the rest of the way out just because he had the one great game.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. But right now you're looking for any silver lining you can get if you're a Brian Thomas Jr. owner. So that's why you kind of look at that game in a positive light.
Arrows up.
That game was why you should not have given up on him yet.
Yeah, 100%.
As an owner.
It's why he was a buy low option for us when we talked about him in previous weeks anyway. So it is Judkins for me. As far as this question goes, the analysis is real simple. A low-end RB1, which is what I have Judkins ranked, is always going to be more valuable than a wide receiver 2-tier player. And that's ultimately what Brian Thomas Jr. is as of this moment. And that's actually trending up. So I have Brian Thomas at wide receiver 18 right now. I had him buried as a wide receiver 3-tier type player the past couple of weeks. And that's been pretty close to what you've been getting. The only reason I even have him in my top 20, because I probably still wouldn't even after the Chiefs game, is because Seattle's secondary is really banged up right now. And we kind of saw that come to play this past Sunday, right? So Brian Thomas Jr. could have a really favorable matchup. First of all, Tariq Woolen, even if he plays, is garbage. But if he really doesn't play, their backup is super garbage. We still don't know if Devon Witherspoon's going to be able to come back. He's been kind of in and out of the lineup this entire season. So if you got a Tariq Woolen, no Devon Witherspoon, there's no reason Brian Thomas Jr., after coming off of a positive performance, shouldn't be able to take the advantage of this situation to be able to get back on track. Seattle looks like a tougher defense against wide receivers than what they actually are. A lot of it is that the teams that they've played are more run-centric, or it's when they had their corners healthy. Like, neither one of those things are true in this situation. And then we saw with Tampa Bay what happens when neither one of those things are true. You get lit up. So this is a decent match for Brian Thomas Jr., but yes, it would be Quinshon Judkins for me. All right. Well, I've got a trade question. 'Tis the season. Should I trade Breece Hall and Xavier Worthy for James Cook. What do you think, Adam?
I think it just comes down to either A, do you have, or B, can you easily acquire, like reasonably expect to acquire a top 30 or so? And I say top 30 is in wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, or at least like a high tier upside wide receiver 3 at minimum. So like at least like a Keenan Allen type of guy that you, or a QJ, or someone you're excited about who maybe you didn't have a lot of anticipation. These are guys that I think realistically you could have had in your bench that you've now elevated to a starter. If you have one of those guys, I'm saying go for it. But I wouldn't want to lose the starting spot at wide receiver if you don't have someone good that you can kind of fill that with, because I do think Xavier Worthy is getting really valuable opportunities. I know fantasy wise it didn't work out for him this past week, but I think that he's got a bright season ahead of him. So I wouldn't want to lose out on a quality wide receiver without having a good option otherwise.
I think that's fair. Chase, where do you fall on this?
I said the same thing when I kind of looked at this. I said, I really want to see what this dude's receiver core looks like. My instinct is to say, no, I really wouldn't. Now it's an upgrade. It's an upgrade overhaul to Cook fantasy wise, but not as big a one as I think some people might think it is. I mean, it's 3 points a week, even in half PPR. That's nice. But you've got to look at, like we just said, what's the fallout on the rest of your roster, because you're giving up 2 startable caliber players to basically improve your running back 1. Breece Hall, in the games where Justin Fields has been healthy, he's averaging 14.9 PPR points in the games where Fields is healthy. And that would have him at running back 11 on the season in a points per game basis. So when Fields is healthy and isn't missing, Hall is a running back 1. Cook is a mid-level running back 1 with high upside in that offense. Hall has a great running back schedule the rest of the season, so you're bailing on that early. And Worthy is a boomer bust wide receiver 2, but we really don't even know what he looks like yet, what that offense looks like yet, with him and Rice on the field together, really hammering away on it. I really am curious about what that's going to end up looking like. I don't know that he still isn't boomer bust, but I really want to see what that looks like. So my instinct here is to kind of pull back and say, don't jump on that unless you can afford the hit in your flex position or in your wide receiver 2 position, because you're giving up 2 starters for 1.
I think I'm a little more aggressive on this than you guys are. So I don't disagree with what you guys are saying as far as like, you need to have some options at wide receiver. And we don't have that in this question, sure. But I'm just going to look at this as, in a vacuum, face value this trade. I would pull the freaking trigger without blinking. The only thing that might give me a slight hesitation was something you mentioned, Chase, the schedule part. And not necessarily because Breece Hall's good schedule, because I don't think
the James Cook playoff one's rough.
The James Cook playoff is what's rough. So here's who they play in the playoffs. The Patriots, who just held him in check, the Cleveland Browns, and then the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I think James Cook is a good enough player in that offense to be able to overcome that, so it doesn't super scare me or anything like that. That's the only thing that would even give me a second's hesitation on this deal. Justin Fields doesn't stay on the field, Chase. That's part of his problem. So with Breece Hall, right now, he's the running back 25 in a points per game. James Cook's running back 5. Xavier Worthy, to me, without Rashee Rice, is a low-end wide receiver 2, who's a little bit boomer bust. I don't know what he is with Rashee Rice. The last time we saw them together, Xavier Worthy got kind of delegated to what the Hollywood Brown role is now. Now, he's a better player than that. And I'm not saying he's going to totally go away. But I do think the presence of Rashee is actually a negative for Xavier Worthy's consistency week to week. And therefore, from that standpoint, I'm pulling the trigger on this deal. Give me the RB1. I'll figure out wide receiver on the waiver wire or whatever I have later on. But give me the big upgrade with James Cook, who is right up there with Jonathan Taylor and Bijan Robinson and Christian McCaffrey and Jahmyr Gibbs. Right up there with the top guys. And those are the guys who are going to win you leagues this season. So I think I'm a little more aggressive than you guys are on that front. See how it plays out. All right, last big question that we have. I love this question. Couldn't wait for this one. Am I dumb to want to drop TJ Hockenson for Mason Taylor? What do you think, Chase?
No, I don't think it's dumb at all. I think that Taylor is on his upswing. He looks like he is maybe ascendant in that offense as opposed to Hockenson, who is on the backside of his career in terms of his usefulness. But I still think it's not a giant upgrade. You're still playing tight end roulette. I don't think that either one of these guys is going to be that like every week set it, forget it answer at tight end, unfortunately, even though I do think Taylor's getting better. Hockenson is seeing 4 to 5 targets a game in this year, consistent, and he's hitting at 1.3 points per target on his career. This year, he's hitting at 1.28. He's almost right at his career average for points per target. So far, Taylor, like I said, he's ascendant right now, and he's gotten better, a lot better in the last few weeks, but he's only hitting at just over 1 point per target here. He's got an 18.9% target share, but you got to remember, he had 12 targets last week. Before that, he was only seeing 3 or 4 targets every game too. That 12 targets a week last week really jumped him up in those rankings. He has seen the field more lately. I said in the preseason, I liked him as a tight end sleeper. I liked what I thought he could do with Justin Fields as quarterback, or with Tyrod Taylor if it comes down to it. But you're not dumb for wanting to do that. If you want to take a chance on the guy who you think is on the way up as opposed to the boring old guy that you know, go for it. But I don't think either one of them is a set it and forget it option the rest of the year. I still think you're playing tight end roulette.
I think Mason Taylor can be the set it and forget it. He's already passed Breece Hall for second in targets on the Jets. Josh Reynolds is their wide receiver 2. Mason Taylor is the wide receiver 2.
I love him as their potential number 2 target. I said that all offseason too. We're still not excited about this offense.
On the opposite side, and I agree with that. And that is like second wide receiver on a bad passing offense. Problem is, JJ McCarthy's career high in pass attempts in a game is 21. They are 25th in pass attempts in the NFL. Now, granted, they had the bye week, but 25th in pass attempts in the NFL. And that is with Carson Wentz, their backup, throwing 40-something.
Chucking it.
Yeah. So he's the one that's throwing off the average. They're not throwing the ball with JJ McCarthy. And I would be terrified of starting Hockenson with JJ McCarthy if and when JJ McCarthy comes back. Would be terrified.
Yeah, Adam, you and I see this the exact same way on both fronts. So one, I do think Taylor might be a set it and forget it the rest of the season. So last 2 games, it wasn't just last week. The last 2 games, he's enjoyed a 25 and a 26% target share. He is the number 2. And yes, it's a bad passing offense. However, it's such a bad passing offense in the way that it works for fantasy, because here's what happens. They suck so bad the first 3 quarters that they have to play super up tempo and do a ton of volume in the 4th quarter. And when Garrett Wilson's not there to force feed him the ball, Mason Taylor's there to force feed him the ball. I got Mason Taylor as my tight end 10 for this week against Denver, because I think Garrett Wilson's going to have a hell of a time against Patrick Surtain this week. I think Mason Taylor might be good for a ton of volume heading into this matchup. So I do think he's ascending from that standpoint. The other thing is TJ Hockenson, kind of to Adam's point, but the first 5 weeks, so time with JJ, time with Carson Wentz, he's only underperforming his expected fantasy points by 2.1. His expected fantasy points is tight end 21. His points per game is tight end 22. I don't see where the upside swing for Hockenson's coming from, unless there's just a philosophical change out of Kevin O'Connell right now with other Carson Wentz or JJ McCarthy. There might not be any more upside. That's the problem. Mason Taylor has the 3rd best schedule rest of way for tight ends. TJ Hockenson has the 27th. So not only do I not see the volume coming, the upswing TJ Hockenson, but the matchups are not going to be there either. The matchups will be there for Mason Taylor. I do think he's a set and forget it the rest of the year. So not only do I think whoever this person is not dumb for wanting to do this, I think it's a move they absolutely need to be making 100%, because Hockenson doesn't need to be owned in 12-man leagues at the tight end position right now. Just flat out doesn't. So that's where I fall in on that. All right. With that, it's time for a segment we finally get to reintroduce into the 2025 season.
Hot and so hot and her.
Yes. My bread and butter in fantasy. I'm so excited to talk Dynasty on here again. I've been missing doing it. Just a little bit of quick housekeeping. So Dynasty temperature check. I think this will be valuable for your redraft leagues because we're going to talk about some guys who are underperforming, overperforming, and what we think of them both long-term, which maybe isn't that important to you, but rest of season as well, because we're trying to win Dynasty championships too this season. So we're talking about what they're doing the rest of this season as well as a part of this. And then just the other thing, a lot of shows will do buy, sell, hold, like that whole thing. Where we are really trying to be different here is that it's really important what these values are, because depending on your league, how your league's market is specifically, any player can be a buy, sell, or hold, like regardless of what it is in my league or Chase's league or whichever. Like if the guy with Alvin Kamara will only give him up for 2 firsts, then guess what? He's probably a sell or someone you're not buying, versus if it's a third in a different league, then obviously a buy. So there's my asterisks about this segment. The story of this week's will be some of these underperformers, some of these guys who we expected to be stars and maybe haven't been. And the first one is A.J. Brown for the Eagles. He is so far, I believe in the season as a whole, but definitely so far in October, is the most traded player in Dynasty. And this is sourced from a combination of Sleeper, Yahoo, and ESPN. So can pretty safely say the most traded player in Dynasty, not just our viewers, not just whatever, like good sample, most traded player. Drafted fairly high if you were in a startup, certainly in your redrafts as well. And he is at half-point PPR, which is what this show runs on, 7 points per game. That is 53rd amongst wide receivers. So has been a disappointment, to say the absolute least. And he's not happy about it either. I mean, we can talk about that. But so some example trades for you guys. And I want you guys to let me know, what's this value like? What trades do you think are the most interesting, and which types of teams, like if you were in Dynasty, maybe a rebuild, you would buy them, but maybe in a contender, you wouldn't, types, things like that. So some of these example trades, AJ Brown and Kyron Williams for Brock Bowers, AJ Brown for Tajay Spears and Sam Darnold, or AJ Brown for Troy Franklin and a 26 second. So actually a lot cheaper than he was in the summer. I can tell you that.
That is brutal. Can we talk that real quick for a second? Forget what trade I would prefer. So one thing I always think is really, really funny when the most traded player in fantasy is probably going to get traded in real life. Okay.
Yeah.
So always a little bit interesting, because that could represent a lot of things, like wide variant. It could represent super upside, or you could just get completely screwed. It's hard to imagine he gets more screwed than what he is right now if that were to happen. I do think ultimately if the Eagles were to trade him, it would not be until the offseason. But just think about the names you just said. Like him and Kyron for Bowers. Okay, fine. Yeah, sure. Makes sense. Tracks. Sure. Whatever. Tajay Spears and Sam Darnold, Troy Franklin, and a second rounder for this upcoming season for AJ Brown still in his prime. Like what are we talking about? Like these are deals being done.
Yeah,
I can maybe see Bowers, only because it's hard if you're not in a position to draft a tight end in Dynasty. It's hard to get your hands on one. So I can kind of understand that to some degree. Hold him. He's AJ Brown. He's not going to be this bad for Tajay Spears. What are we talking about?
Yeah. He's averaged a wide receiver 10 finish basically with Philadelphia since he's been there the last 3 years. The problem is that this kind of trade, these kinds of trades that we're talking about right now for AJ Brown are applying that redraft mentality to the Dynasty realm. He's 28 years old, dude. Like you said, he's still in his prime. He's still flipping good. This offense this year is so screwed up under Petrillo, and they don't know what the hell they want to do yet. In the last 3 years, they've been a top 12 team. They've been a top 10 team for 2 of those years in terms of yards per attempt. This year, they're averaging 6.4 yards per attempt. That's a full yard and a half less than what they were last year. Last year, they were 7th in the league in that stat. This year, they're 24th. They're just not throwing the ball downfield, which is what you would like to see out of A.J. Brown, because A.J. Brown is only averaging 5.4 yards a target right now. He averages 9.9 on his career. Last year, he was at 11.1. They're just not throwing the ball downfield at all. And I know when we were watching the game this Sunday, Even the announcers were like, "Oh, squeaky wheel gets the grease. Ha ha ha! Look, they're funneling the ball." A lot of flipping good it did him. He still ended up with the same thing he's ended up with all season: 8 targets and a handful of catches and a handful of yards. None of the stuff was downfield at all. He's averaging a half a target fewer per game than he has in his career. So they're not throwing the ball as much, and they're not throwing it downfield to him, which is what you want to do with freaking AJ Brown. I'm blaming that offense. They're down over 2 points a game from what they scored last year. Their defense is allowing 4 points more per game. So these games are more competitive. And you would think every single one of their game has been a 1-score game. All their wins and their loss have all been a 1-score game. You'd think in a competitive atmosphere, you'd want to use your best offensive, pass receiving weapon. They've got Saquon Barkley. And
we warned you guys about this in the offseason.
Right. Exactly.
You guys in the offseason, because when Nick Sirianni gets to pick his guy as the offensive coordinator, this is what happens. We saw it 2 years ago when Shane Steichen left, and they had, what was his name? Brian Johnson. We had Brian Johnson come in, and the passing offense was broken, and AJ Brown was pissed. And what happened? The whole thing imploded. Now remember, they went 10-0 that year. So everybody wants to talk to me about like the Eagles are winning right now. Why should they be complaining? They went 10-0 that year. And they completely imploded to the point where they barely even made the postseason and got trounced by the Tampa Bay Bucks, who are not the Tampa Bay Bucks that they are today. So now you bring in Kevin Patullo. That passing offense is broken. He's not running well on top of it. I think that's what's driving people crazy the most part. Saquon Barkley's averaging 3 yards a carry.
Right.
Like, you're not even running the ball well. That's just what you're sticking with the game plan. They are just more physical and more talented than a lot of the teams that they're playing. It's the only reason they're winning games. That can't win out over the course of a season. Eventually, coaching needs to help these guys. I don't know that it does, because I don't think Kevin Patullo has a creative bone in his body. You don't even have to be that creative with the A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts Eagles. You don't. Just get them one-on-ones to the outside. It's not complicated. So, yeah, I don't know if this gets turned around this season, to be honest with you.
Redraft, trade him all day long. But this is Dynasty. Think about what the hell you're doing.
Whether he stays in Philly and they get a new offensive coordinator or he moves on, either way, it's going to be better than what you got.
Yep.
So is it safe to say that if you were rebuilding a Dynasty, you would consider buying him?
Jump on that. If somebody wants to give it to him for Tajay Spears and a handful of peanuts,
pick, you want to give me AJ Brown, I'm all about it. Yeah, 100%.
All right. So definitely some strong opinions on buying AJ Brown for some of the values that we've seen in some of these real life trades, especially if you're rebuilding. Maybe not so much if you're looking to win some games this season. Speaking about guys who have been disappointing, Chase Brown for the Bengals. We've talked about the Bengals already today and that putrid offensive line. He is the most traded running back and the third most traded player overall. He is at 8.1 points per game. That's 38th overall, has the new quarterback, so maybe that'll help out. Some example trades, which are like all over the place. So Chase Brown for a 26 and a 27 second, so 2 seconds, straight up for a 26 first, which I actually saw straight up for a 26 first multiple times, which is crazy to me, just based on how he's been so far. And by the way, so the trade numbers are over the last month, like how often they've been traded. However, the trades that I'm looking at are specifically in the last week. I'm only worried about what's happening right now. So this isn't before the season. Someone traded a first for Chase Brown. This is a trade that's happening. I've seen multiple times in the last week. Real trades. All right. So next one, Chase Brown and a 2028 first rounder for Rome Odunze, who is a wide receiver 1 so far this season. And then on the other end of it, I've seen 4 Matthew Golden straight up. And then one that I thought was really, really fascinating. 4 CMC straight up. An RB1. So if you're in Dynasty, what are you doing with Chase Brown?
I'm trading him if I can get these packages.
Right.
It's not even a hesitation. So here's the thing you guys got to remember about Chase Brown. I love the player, and his schedule is really nice for running backs the rest of the way this season. But we don't, at least I don't think this is getting any better. Joe Flacco doesn't help this thing out. This whole thing looks broken. I don't think Joe Burrow comes back at all this year. They're not going to be in a position to make the playoffs for him to want to come back. Chase Brown was a day 3 pick.
Yes.
He hasn't been that great.
Yes.
Like, he worked off of all volume a season ago, essentially. And he hasn't been very efficient this year. The Bengals could choose to easily move off this guy completely. I know CMC's older, but because he can catch the ball, he's still going to age relatively well for fantasy purposes. 2028 first and Rome Odunze, yes, please. Even for Matthew Golden, I would consider as well. First rounder straight up. Chase Brown's not even going to be valued as a first rounder by the time the season's over. If it keeps going the way that it is. Like, yes, to all these.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, that's my notes. I have almost exactly what you said there. I said Brown isn't anything special. Oh, and by the way, this team has a terrible O-line history, not just like this year. Like, they're terrible all the time. They're never going to figure it out. It's going to be a long time before we see a decent offensive line in Cincinnati there. But to me, though, these trades are a lot closer to being right on for what I would expect in terms of name values and dynasty values. 25-year-old running back who is theoretically in his prime, but we know that the cliff comes fast at that position. He's a day 3 pick, like you said, so there's not a whole lot special there. They don't have a need to. It's why I wasn't big on him last year when they signed Zach Moss and had him, because I was like, if they thought he was the long-term answer, they probably wouldn't have brought a guy in like Moss who had been a full-time guy the year before. So I would take almost all of these, I think, and I would jump on them because I don't have to be married to Chase Brown. I don't feel like you're losing out on anything special. And if you can get something back that's going to help you win either now or in the future, be it CMC or be it a draft pick, if that's the position you're in, jump on that because you're not losing anything special.
Dan, does it matter to you what your team is looking like?
No.
He's not helping you this year.
Right. So contender, you're trading him regardless. That one, I think we're all on the same page. But even rebuild, a young running back, ship him out regardless.
No, but yeah, exactly. Because here's the problem. Even if you are in a rebuild and think, okay, well, I can get an RB1, maybe he returns to that form next year. Like we kind of laid out for you, there's no guarantee that's the case. You are running backs who are day 3 picks who have 1-year pops get replaced all the time in the NFL. All the time.
Yeah.
And the Bengals will be in a situation to be able to do that. So no, he's no value to you as a rebuild. He's not value to you as a contender.
If someone wants to pop you a first-round pick in some way or shape or form, or even a second, especially if it's going to be a high, you jump on that because now you've got the opportunity to go out and get a guy who we think can be and should be a number 1 type guy all the way. Chase Brown, you're out of here.
One last guy who we'll get through really, really quickly, and a guy who I think is going to be a really, really interesting for us to talk about, and that is Ladd McConkey, so we've got the entire top 3 most rated players. It's the first day of this segment. First time we've done this segment this season, so I thought we started off with a bang. 3 of the most disappointing players in this fantasy season so far, and the top 3 most rated players in Dynasty this season so far. So Ladd McConkey, half-point PPR, 7.6. So that's a little bit higher than A.J. Brown. That's up to 48th in points per game. Some example trades for Ladd McConkey. Really fascinating range for him because some of these I think are good and some of them are bad personally. Just straight up for Deebo Samuel for a 2026 and 2028 first. Ladd McConkey and a 2026 first for Rome Odunze. Straight up for Bill Krosky Merritt. And Ladd McConkey for Brian Thomas Jr. and a 2026 second. That's a wide range for Ladd McConkey, folks.
Yeah, it is.
And they're all asinine.
On one end of the spectrum or the other.
Freaking ridiculous. First off, I think for the most part, they're undervaluing him, except for the BTJ trade. I say if you're getting that BTJ trade for Ladd, trade with that guy some more because you can just take whatever you feel like having off of his roster, apparently. But remember what I said earlier about applying redraft thought processes to dynasty deals? There's a lot of that going on in here. This is a bad idea, even if you're in win now mode, Deebo looks pretty good right now in terms of like what you're getting right now in the moment. Keenan Allen is not going to be on that team forever. Ladd McConkey is 23 years old. He was literally born yesterday. he's young, and we know he's good. We saw it last year. We've seen it this year. He hasn't played terribly this year. It's the offense, and now he's got more competition. No, these are flipping dumb. Keep Ladd.
Yeah, so kind of to Chase's point a little bit there is Keenan Allen's not going to be there next year.
No.
I think we all kind of agree this is probably a one and done deal. Even if he is, he's going to be another year older. I don't know how effective he can continue to be as he gets like his mid-30s. Quentin Johnson, are they really going to re-sign him? I think that's a question that needs to be asked. I don't know that they will or not. Now, maybe they will, because he may not be overly expensive. And he's been producing well for them, but they also did draft Trey Harris. So I don't think it's a given, because those are the same type of wide receiver that you're going to want to have anyway. Ladd McConkey is getting wide open, guys. Like, if you watch the field at all, the film, excuse me, at all, or even if you like go to some data sites and you see like his separation scores, he's getting wide open. This is not a situation where Ladd McConkey's going through a sophomore slump and he's just not playing as well. He is. He's just not getting fed the ball the same way that he was. So this is going to correct itself with Ladd McConkey. I say that more so to point out that if you trade him straight up for Deebo Samuel, you're a moron.
And Frosky Merritt, by the way. I have to put that one in.
No, what the hell is that move all about? Yeah. Oh,
yeah. Like that's just flavor of the week. That's impulsive, and we never want people to be impulsive in fantasy football.
Let's never talk about that again.
Now look, if you want to give us 2 firsts, if you want a 2026 first and a 2028 first, and I'm a team that's still in rebuild mode, I'd contemplate it, but I still favor Ladd because he's 23, and that's the type of player that you're trying to draft for those draft picks to begin with. But I'd contemplate it. If Rome Odunze is your guy, I'm okay with that move. I am okay with that move because Rome Odunze looks like he could be a superstar, and now he's attached to Ben Johnson for the long term. Caleb Williams keeps playing better. He's attached to Caleb Williams for the long term. DJ Moore might not be long for that team. So Rome Odunze actually has even more volume potentially. So if Dunze is just your guy, because you're still in this trade, you're still giving up an extra first.
And the first you're giving up is 2-3 years out. And
well, no, it's 26. So it's 26.
No, I saw 20. Oh yeah, no, I'm looking one question up. But okay, yeah, you're right. Either way,
it's 26. It's a good package. So, but if Rome Odunze is your guy, I'm okay with that deal. And BTJ and a 2026 second, yeah, I'm okay with that deal too. It's like just like anybody, it's got to be very value, but just calm down. Just calm down. That's really my biggest thing here.
These are the same people that wanted to drop Jamar Chase because his quarterback sucks.
It's funny because I just cut off the show where I literally just
I know you did. I know you
talked about that.
I saw it.
Oh,
but these are those same kinds of people that you were talking about there. So the overreaction, trading with their heart, not thinking with their head, not stepping back, taking that breath and understanding that I know you're disappointing in Ladd McConkey. I know he hasn't been wide receiver 11 like you thought he was going to be this year. He did just get in the end zone again and had a decent game, and it's a good passing offense. And if either one of those other two guys goes down, all of a sudden he shoots through the roof again. And that's just for this year. That's not the idea that he's 23 years old and he's going to be there for another 8 seasons. Don't be stupid, people.
All right, so I'm going to end the segment after this one last question quickly, Dan. And if you're competing right now, would you consider throwing some trade offers out for a Ladd McConkey, like based on these values that I'm bringing up?
Yes. So he's a buy low candidate in redraft. Look, with Amarian Hampton banged up for the next 4 weeks, and they weren't running well with him, this is going to be even a more pass first team than what they have been to this point. So the extra volume, while it hasn't funneled to Ladd McConkey, might just be available anyway over the next few weeks. And then I think as the season progresses, you're going to see Keenan Allen, who typically gets hurt at the end of the year, start to regress, and Ladd McConkey is going to be picking up the slack. So even in redraft leagues, I'm trying to buy low on Ladd McConkey right now. So yes, as a contender, I definitely would in Dynasty.
All right. I think we just gave you guys some really good Dynasty advice. I'm definitely excited about talking more Dynasty on this show, but I'm also very excited about talking about some DFS.
Hills, yeah, let's get her going here on the DFS Cocktail. Welcome into the bar, everybody. Some decent lines this week, some big lines this week. You've got the Packers are 2 touchdown favorites right now over Cincinnati at home with Joe Flacco as their shiny new toy at quarterback, shiny old new toy at quarterback. They bought it at Goodwill. You got a touchdown and a 7.5 point differential here for the Rams as favorites in Baltimore. When was the last time you thought you were going to see that kind of thing? A team in Baltimore favored by a touchdown more. That's absolutely ridiculous. But it's the reality we're living in right now too, with the idea that Cooper Rush might be starting again for them. You got a touchdown difference in Arizona with Arizona and Indianapolis. You've got 5.5 points for Cleveland and Pittsburgh. People think the Pittsburgh's going to pound on them with their rookie quarterback. So you've got some fun there. You've also got some high point totals, especially on your primetime games this week. Remember, there's two Monday night games this week. Plus there's that Sunday morning early London game. So when you're setting your lineups, when you're looking at things, when you're looking at what slates you're going to play in that, keep those things in mind. We got a quirky schedule this week, but 52.5 points right now, the over under for the Detroit Kansas City game there. Kansas City favored by 2.5 right now. So a close game and a shootout. That's something we probably want to take a look at real hard. Buffalo at Atlanta is 49.5 for an over under. Chicago and Washington also on Monday night, 49.5 over under. So some big point totals possibly coming up late in the window there. So if you're down after Sunday afternoon, don't despair. Take heart if you've got anybody playing on those nights there. But I did mention here, I said I wanted a piece of that Detroit Kansas City game, and that's where we're going to look right now for the basis of our DFS cocktail here for our core players here. We're going to go with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback at 6,500 here. I'm going to take him this week. I'm going to pay up a little bit for him there. He's quarterback 4 on the season. He's quarterback 4 in the rankings for this week. He's 5th in DraftKings salary this week at 6,500 there. But we're talking about the guy who's quarterback 2 on the season. He was quarterback 2 last week. It looks like Patrick Mahomes is usable again as a fantasy asset here. Last week, 318 yards. He did throw a pick, but he had a touchdown. And guess what? He ran the ball really well again. 6 rushes, 60 yards, and a touchdown there. Detroit's tough. They can be tough there, but this is going to be the best O-line that Detroit has faced in Kansas City. Kansas City's O-line is the best one that they've faced this year. They've allowed the 6th fewest sacks in the game right now. I think one of the keys to this game, one of the matchups I think we all want to be watching is going to be Aiden Hutchinson on the outside versus the right tackle, especially Jawan Taylor, and how he makes that matchup work if he gets to rush off of that side there. So take a look at that. But Patrick Mahomes, he's 3rd in quarterback rush yards. He's had 3 games of 50+ yards rushing and a touchdown. I like him to be able to do the same kind of thing this week, especially if they try to match, like I said, Hutchinson up against that right tackle, Jawan Taylor there. I flush him out to the side. I like Patrick Mahomes on the move. I like Patrick Mahomes, a mobile Patrick Mahomes. We'll take him at 6,500 this week. And then we're going to play his wide receiver, Xavier Worthy, who we talked about a little bit earlier. I'm going to play 6,000 for him. Ranked wide receiver 12 this week. He's 15th in salary. So you're getting a little bit of a discount there. Not a giant one there, but in the last 2 weeks, which is when he's been healthy after that crazy, I got ran over by Travis Kelce in the first game. But in the last 2 games, he's 8th in wide receiver targets, in the league there. And it's been mostly quiet, 8th in targets there, but Detroit has given up the 6th most points to wide receivers. And if you take a look at what they did last week, I think you can take some deep shots there with them. I think that you can do some things with Xavier Worthy there. I like the idea of him being able to get loose here in this game and stop being quiet in terms of what he does with those targets. So we're going to take Xavier Worthy at 6K there too. We're going to play back against him then with one of those Detroit Lions, and we're going to take here Jameson Williams instead of Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm going to pay down a little bit for Jameson Williams. He's only at 4,700 this week, and he's only ranked wide receiver 31. But I like the idea of Jameson Williams here being able to, like I said, get deep. If you look at what the Jaguars did last week against the Kansas City Chiefs, look at the top 3 guys that, their top 3 receivers in that game all averaged over 20 yards a hit, 20 yards of reception. That's the kind of thing that I would love to see them turn Xavier Worthy loose on. And if you look at what they've been doing with that pass game in Kansas City, they have been throwing the ball down more than they had in the last several years. I like that thought. I like that idea. Go for it. Hit Jameson Williams while everybody else is concentrating underneath on Sam Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I like the idea of some of those deep hits that were getting hit last week, all going to Jameson Williams. So we'll play him. Plus, he's cheap at 4,700, so we'll be able to fill in around him there. So then the fourth part of this whole cocktail here, before we get to the actual drink, we're going to go with Ashton Genty. I'm going to pay up for him at 6,900. He's RB11 on the week, 9th in salary. So you're having to pay, like I said, you're having to pay up a little bit for him. But when I look at that matchup there with Tennessee, I expect Las Vegas to be, Las Vegas hasn't been great on the season, but they're better than Tennessee. Tennessee is not good. Tennessee gives up a ton of points there to the running game, as they should, because everybody's running on them because they're up on them all the time. I'm going to go ahead and take a shot on Ashton Genty. I know he was a little more quiet last week. The week before that was his giant coming out party, his breakout party. I think the truth is somewhere in between those two in terms of a week in, week out basis. I'm willing to pay the $6,900 for Ashton Genty. So we're paying up a little bit at quarterback. We're paying a good price for that wide receiver. We're paying a good price for our top running back, but I still think you're able to plug some guys in around them. Okay. So real quick here, let's mix this drink up. We're calling this drink the Red Zone this week. And it's basically a pink squirrel. If you've heard of a pink squirrel, it's a pink squirrel with kind of a shot of lime here. Okay. So what we're going to do, pink squirrel, we're going to take an ounce and a half of heavy cream. And some people will tell you that you should make that with ice cream or with milk. Use the heavy cream. It's good. It's frothy. It'll taste good for you. We're going to go with an ounce and a half then too of creme de cacao, creme de cocoa there. Use the white stuff. If you use the white stuff, you maintain the nice little pink tone of the drink there, which is where the name Pink Squirrel comes from. So an ounce and a half of heavy cream and an ounce and a half of creme de cacao. Here's the big kickers, these next two ingredients. This is called creme de noyau, French. Yes. Okay. Basically look for Balls brand, BOLS, like Minute Ball, except balls. This is, it's nice. You can see it's got a nice red color there. That's what's going to give this pink squirrel, its color. That's going to give the Red Zone its color, what we're calling it there. If you can't find balls, if you can't find creme de noyau, you can, if you want, make a real cheap imitation of it with amaretto. And I know everybody can find amaretto where they are. If you live in Northwest Wisconsin, sometimes you can't find some of these fun things I talk about. You can make it with amaretto. Find the creme de noyau. It's the way to do it. Trust me. But then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to put in 3/4 of an ounce of lime juice. And that's what's going to make the difference here. That's going to give it a little bit of bite here. It's going to actually we're going lighter on the cream than you normally would on a pink squirrel, but we're going to add in that lime juice there. And that's going to give it a little bit of bite. So while I shake this up, guys, you've got my thoughts on a core 4 for this week. Dan, especially, I'm interested to see where you're leaning this week and what you think we can do with this one as I shake this up here.
All right. Well, with your core 4, I also want to try to add Jalen Waddle into this mix. The target funnel is real now, $6,100, and I want to actually add Quentin Johnston in here too. So I know he finally came back down to earth, but I want that Chargers Miami game, especially with two of the top deep throwing targets on those two teams. Two teams are going to have to now be pass funnels and what could be the shootout of the week. So I'm trying to get those two into my lineup here as the other wide receivers and flexes, and not overly expensive. I don't know what you got, Adam.
Yeah, the thing I'll add is that we talked about earlier about our, whether you like Judkins or Etienne, they're the same price. So if you either one, for me personally, I think is a good choice. I personally would go Judkins. Obviously, I think that the Steelers' run defense from the first 2 weeks is a little closer to reality than the last two. But depending on your flavor, like I said, both the same price. So just take one of those guys, and I think you're in a really good spot for that second running back spot.
No, I will tell you on the Judkins Etienne front. Yeah, I plugged in lineups with both of those guys, on and off with this same lineup because I loved them both too. And I agree. I completely agree with the whole idea of Quentin Johnston. Last thing we're going to put on this, now that I got it shaken up and strained into a coupe glass, which is kind of fun to look at, is a dash of nutmeg. I mean, you want to do a little bit at a time because nutmeg tends to clump up a little bit maybe in your shaker, and it'll come out in a big giant lump. You don't want that. But what that's going to do is it's going to kind of make this almost like a little bit of a peppery overtone to it. It's really going to bring out the more complex flavors of this. But there is your Red Zone.
Love it.
Cheers, everybody, and good luck to you on your DFS this week.
Love it. One quick note, Jake Tunge's value of tight end of the week. George Kittle won't be back till next week. He's $3,700 against Tampa Bay. There might be a Ricky Pearsall. Just want to throw that out there as we wrap up Operation Domination. Thank you guys for checking out the show. I hope you all enjoyed it. Make sure you download on your favorite podcast app and you go to the Fantasy Football Advice Network on YouTube at FF Advice Net. Subscribe to the Operation Domination playlist. You can find all of us on social media, and I'll be back tomorrow with Dr. Brian Scott with the Injury Inquiries episode. So make sure you check it out because it's a hefty one, unfortunately. But we'll see you guys then.
Good luck.